After the Going Merry narrowly escapes being hit by a sea train which knocks away the giant frog attempting to derail it, the Straw Hats meet the stationmaster Kokoro along with her granddaughter Chimney and her bunny-like cat Gonbi. Kokoro assures the crew that the frog, Yokozuna, was perfectly fine and that it was always testing its strength against the sea train Puffing Tom, which connects several of the nearby islands. She also explains that the log pose would lead them to Water 7, a canal city of shipwrights where they could fix their ship, providing Luffy with a map and letter of introduction to the shipwrights leader Iceberg. The Straw Hats reach Water 7, the group splits up with Luffy, Nami and Usopp leaving to exchange their gold and rent boats driven by fish-like sea monsters called Yagras. Luffy, Nami, and Usopp get strange greetings from the residents and they get to experience the roller coaster-like channels of Water 7. Luffy find out that some pirates have been beaten at the hands of some powerful craftsmen, the Galila Company. Meanwhile, Chopper loses Robin when she is approached by a masked figure and Zoro encounters strange figures that came to the Going Merry. He awakens and drives off the Frankie family, a gang of hoodlum pirate hunters. Luffy's group gets the gold they acquired from Skypiea exchanged for 30 million berries. They soon reach Dock No. 1 and meet a man who resembles Usopp, Galley LA's carpenter foreman Kaku, who jumps off to inspect the Going Merry while they speak to Iceberg, and Usopp loses the money in his care to the Frankie family. The Frankie family nearly escape with the Straw Hats' money were it not for untimely intervention of Galley LA's Polly while he was evading debt collectors, with another member named Rob Lucci keeping him from running off with the money. Iceberg's aide Khalifa shows Luffy, Nami, and Usopp around Dock No. 1 and tells them how Iceberg founded the Galila Company. Usopp and 200 million berries he was carrying go missing as Kaku returns from the Going Merry and tells them that their keel is irreparably damaged. Luffy refuses to believe that Galila cannot repair the Going Merry before he and Nami realize that not only is Usopp missing now, but the two briefcases that were returned to them are empty. Nami decides to head to Frankie House and finds Usopp on the way in a pitiful state, heading back to the ship for help while Usopp goes to the Frankie House himself. Luffy, Sanji, Zoro, and Chopper follow Usopp's bloody trail to the Frankie House, where they find him passed out in front after being beaten up in an attempt to get the money back from the Frankie family's leader Frankie who left with the money. The four of them proceed to overpower the Frankie family and destroy the Frankie House, deducing that the money is likely gone while Luffy accepts that the Going Merry is beyond repair. Once they're back on the ship, Luffy explains to a guilt-ridden Usopp that the Going Merry can no longer be repaired and has chosen to get a new ship instead. Usopp believes that Luffy has abandoned the dignity of their ship and says he's leaving the crew, challenging Luffy to a duel at nighttime. He fights Luffy in order to decide who keeps the Going Merry, going all out while keeping a hesitant Luffy on his toes as he and others remember their time with Usopp. Even after taking a harsh beating, Luffy defeats Usopp before he and the crew leave him and the ship behind. The Straw Hats get themselves a hotel room as Nami finds the crew on the roof and informs them that Iceberg has been shot. As the Galila Company frantically search for answers, Nami and Luffy decide to check on his condition, only to be met by closed gates. At the same time, Frankie returns to Water 7 and goes after Luffy to exact his revenge for destroying the Frankie house. In the streets outside of the hospital, Luffy fights Frankie as the latter reveals himself to be a cyborg. Inside, Iceberg recalls seeing Nico Robin and another tall man before he was shot. The Galila Company run outside and stop Frankie and Luffy and tell them that they suspect the Straw Hat Pirates of the crime. The Galila Company continues to fight Luffy with an enraged Frankie attempting to take both sides out. An incredibly high tide called the Aqua Laguna is coming and Chopper and Sanji rush to warn Usopp. Luffy raises some chaos in order to meet with Iceberg and he demands to know what's happening. Iceberg says he wants to see Robin one more time. In a bar, while recharging his soda reserves, Frankie talks with Kokoro about her theory that Iceberg was shot by an agent of World Government's shadow organization CP9. The rumors she speaks of seem to have some truth as Robin meets with CP9 members. While the crew hide from angry residents, Sanji and Chopper indirectly warn Usopp of Aqua Laguna before discovering Robin, and are informed by her of what they fear that she's responsible and she wants to part ways. Chopper reunites with the others without Sanji and they discuss what's happened. Luffy decides that they need to catch Robin to know the full truth, and Usopp attempts to repair the ship enough to withstand the Aqua Laguna while the Straw Hats make their way to the Galley La Company. The Straw Hats rush to Galley La as 3 CP9 agents commence their raid. Robin and the mysterious man that shot Iceberg due to the latter's devil fruit powers, Masked Man goes on to inform him that CP9 framed the pirates and seeks blueprints he kept hidden and would have passed down to Polly. As Luffy separates from his group, Robin speaks with Iceberg, and while the Masked Man leaves to keep anyone from interfering, Robin learns that Iceberg possesses the blueprints to the ultimate warship Pluton. Elsewhere, Luffy is tied up with Polly after the latter reveals to masked CP9 agents that the blueprints are fake. This forces the CP9 agents to regroup in Iceberg's room to interrogate Iceberg while revealing their identities as Lucci, Kaku, Califa, and Bluno. Lucci tells Iceberg their hypothesis from learning of the decoy blueprints and has Kaku check Iceberg's pulse to confirm that he gave the blueprints to another, a fellow apprentice of his mentor Tom named Cutty Flam, who now goes by Frankie. The Straw Hat Pirates and Polly break into the room where they find Iceberg and CP9. Meanwhile, Frankie learns of Usopp working on the Going Merry and decides to capture him. Luffy and the others request that Robin comes back to the crew, but she refuses and tells them that she cannot accomplish her wish if she were to stay with them. Robin turns to leave, and while CP9 hold the pirates back while intent silence them, Iceberg, and Polly. She successfully escapes, and Lucci decides to use the remaining time before the building goes up in flames to unveil his transformation. He then explains he acquired the power of a Zoan Devil's cat fruit, leopard type, before quickly disposing of Luffy and Zoro while CP9 tie up Polly and Iceberg, leaving them alone as the building slowly burns down around them. In Frankie's underground hideout, Usopp tells him his story and Frankie is finally touched, and in return, he tells him a little about Tom's contributions to water. Usopp believes that the person who repaired the Going Merry in Skypiea was really the ship itself, and Frankie explained that it was inhabited by a spirit who manifests on ships who are dearly cared for, and the Going Merry repaired itself so the Straw Hats can reach the next island. When attempting to stop Frankie from destroying the Going Merry in an act of mercy for the ship's sake, Usopp admits he knows he cannot bring himself to abandon the ship. The doorbell rings from the seaside and the CP9 agents after attacking Frankie's men prior enter. The CP9 agents overpower Frankie and discover a hidden room that they tear through despite Frankie's dismay of them trampling his memories. A long flashback ensues, covering Frankie's past in Tom's workers and how he and Iceberg helped create the sea train so Tom can save their city, while not be held accountable for creating Gold Roger's ship. 8 years prior to the Straw Hats reaching Water 7, a CP5 agent named Spandam seeks to acquire the Pluton blueprints from Tom by any means to give the world government an advantage against all pirates. As Frankie walked into the town on the day that Tom would be a free man, Spandam's flunkies stage an attack with the battleships that Frankie personally constructed. Tom and Iceberg run to their shipyard where they're attacked by 2 ships which also destroy the others, and later, they and Frankie are brought before the judge for trial. Frankie denounces his ships and a provoked Tom punches him, taking him to acknowledge every ship he ever made or he'll never. After telling Frankie to take pride in the ships he created, Tom takes a swing at Spandam before confessing to the attack while asking the judge to alter the arrangement to resolve him and his apprentices of the crime, while taken to Eni's lobby and be executed for building Roger's ship. Frankie, after disfiguring Spandam with the butt of a rifle, falses in his attempt to stop the train to Eni's lobby with his bare hands and was presumed dead by everyone. In the present, after being restrained, Frankie learns that Spandam is now the leader of CP9. Chopper escapes the burning building with Polly and Iceberg on his back and collapses outside. Iceberg tells Nami that CP9 threatened to destroy the Straw Hats if Robin didn't cooperate with them. Nami rushes to tell Chopper so they can go looking for the rest of the crew. Elsewhere, the CP9 agents let go of the Going Merry so she would be destroyed at sea. Polly helps clear the name of the Straw Hats but doesn't tell the mob everything he knows. As he gets the mob to follow Chopper so they can search for the rest of the crew. Nami goes her own way so she can rush to the sea train. As she gets near the station, Sanji, ahead of her, approaches the train. She and the conductors are rescued by Polly when the Aqua Laguna floods the main station. A man hands Nami a letter he found from Sanji. It informs her that Usopp, Frankie, and he are on board the train that had just departed, and on board, he starts storming the cars. High up in the city, Nami speaks with Kokoro and spots Luffy stuck in between two buildings in the back streets where the Aqua Laguna will hit first. Nami finally reaches Luffy and tells him that he needs to hurry before Robin reaches Enies lobby, while Chopper finds Zoro and hands him the Sandai Kitetsu so he can escape the chimney. Luffy pushes apart the buildings he was stuck between and Polly grabs them all so they can escape the Aqua Laguna's massive wave. Sanji fights his way through another train car and finds Usopp and Frankie. Seeing how determined Luffy is to save Robin, Kokoro and Iceberg lends the Straw Hat crew the use of another sea train, Rocket Man. The Frankie family shows up, pleading with Luffy to let them join them because they'll do anything for their leader. The Rocket Man finally makes it out to sea, and as the train connects with the tracks, Luffy has to rescue Chimney before she's thrown off by the wind. Meanwhile, Iceberg has a flashback about when he finally met Frankie again in Water 7. With Luffy and Chimney safe in the train, Polly tells his fellow carpenters who the real culprits were. The Straw Hats, Frankie family, and Galley Luck Company form an alliance. Luffy and Zoro perform a move that acts similar to a cannon and blasts a hole through the wall of the tidal wave ahead of them, opening up a channel for them to pass through. They miraculously pass through unscathed, and the passengers rejoice. Sanji contacts the rest of the crew and fills them in on his current situation. Usopp separates from them, but later, when Sanji and Frankie are spotted, a man named Sogeking comes to their rescue. As Sogeking makes his grand entrance, Frankie and Sanji aren't fooled by his costume, but they try to humor him. They devise a plan first, then detach the last two cars and fight their way through the rest. Back in the Rocket Man, Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Chopper get an outfit change, and Nami shows off the weapon Usopp upgraded for her while he was still with them. Khalifa updates the CP9 on the situation with Frankie, Sanji, and Usopp. Sanji tells Frankie and Usopp to go on without him so he can fight Wanza and his Ramen Kenpo. Soon after, Frankie begins to fight Nero, CP9's Weasel, and Sogeking meets with Robin. Frankie's fight with Nero continues after the latter discovers that Frankie's weak spot is his back, so Frankie lies down flat so he can't get to it, and when Nero demands that he fight seriously, Frankie gets up to perform his centaur form. Sogeking talks with Robin and tells her that the crew knows about her reasons for leaving. Those on the Rocket Man encounter the discarded cars and Zoro slices them so they can pass. He then clashes with Ship Cutter T-Bone, but the fight is short and Zoro joins the crew again in the Rocket Man. On the Puffing Tom, Sanji beats Wanza Beautiful, though Wanza thinks he's ruined his face. Frankie finally gains the upper hand against Nero and defeats him. After beating their respective opponents, Frankie and Sanji stand to fight against the other CP9. Sogeking finally shows himself after hiding under Robin's cloak. They stumble into the room with the CP9 and meet with Sanji and Frankie. Sogeking produces a smokescreen and the four head into another car, detach it and escape, but Blueno pulls their car back. Frankie knocks down the wall so they can escape but ends up on the enemy car, and Blueno opens a door, then back in the Straw Hat car. Robin willingly follows Blueno into his improvised door, and Sogeking and Sanji are left alone. For a while, Blueno explains a little of Robin's past involving the Buster Call, and back at the Rocket Man, Yokozuna the Frog jumps onto the front of the train, knocking them from the rails. After Kokoro speaks with him, he joins the group while the CP9, Frankie and Robin finally reach Enies lobby and disembark.